Effectively introducing new topics in lecture is actually more complex than simply moving to the next chapter of the textbook. To engage students, it is important to bridge the gap between what they have already learned in their coursework or in their lives with the content you are about to deliver. Activating prior knowledge is an excellent technique to prepare students' minds for new content using what they already know. Your new content will likely include a core concept, and learning may require applied skills. It is important to activate students' prior experiences and refresh their skill knowledge. In the EMI classroom, activating prior knowledge additionally requires using multi-language modes and patience to be effective. In the EMI classroom, students with lower English listening skills may require more creative prompts to clearly understand the context. They will also need more time to address memory activation in a different language. They require more time to convey their experiences as well. This does not mean they do not have the prior knowledge or that activation is not working. Poor activation of prior knowledge is not uncommon, but results in ineffective new content introduction. Let's look at some examples of ineffective new topic introductions and the results.
So, last class we discussed marginal cost and marginal revenue. Today, we are going to discuss a new topic, price elasticity. You all know about supply and demand and how they affect price. Well, elasticity is the percent change in quantity caused by a 1% change in price. So, last class we discussed marginal cost and marginal revenue. Today, we are going to discuss a new topic, price elasticity. Price elasticity has to do with the quantity supplied and demand of goods when price changes. What do you know about the effect of price change on the quantity of different goods? Compare cables to mobile phones. So, last class we discussed the marginal cost and marginal revenue. Today, we are going to discuss a new topic, price elasticity. Price elasticity has to do with the quantity supplied and demand of goods when price changes. In pairs, I want you to write down what you know about the effect of price change on the demand of different goods. I will give you 2 minutes.
Poor activation of prior knowledge can stop the learning process in your classroom before it ever starts. Cold topic introductions hold no interest for students as the new learning does not connect with their experience or past knowledge. Students may feel dejected if they have not already mastered the skills and concepts you cite. The more you refer to such concepts or skills, the more buried in incomprehension your students become. In the EMI classroom, students have the additional burden of language comprehension to engage with new material. They may mistake their lack of understanding of a new topic with a language obstacle, when it may simply be that the topic was poorly introduced. On the other hand, an active teacher who plans ahead can take advantage of the opportunity to activate prior knowledge with all of their students, with careful selection of techniques. The result is an engaged group of students with a variety of experiences and past learning to connect with what you teach next. Prior knowledge and ability to comprehend are highly correlated. By activating students' prior knowledge, you not only give them context for new ideas, you also validate their existing knowledge and experiences, promoting mutual respect and inclusion in the classroom. There are two types of prior or background knowledge you can choose to activate. Which type you choose depends on your learning objective for the lesson. One type of prior knowledge you may need to activate is a sub-skill related to a new topic you may teach. Sub-skills are foundational or building block skills a student will need to address the new skill you are instructing. They are the how-to part of a learning objective. For example, in an economics class, a sub-skill for discussing price elasticity may be plotting demand curves. The benefit of refreshing a sub-skill is that students who have not yet been exposed to the material can learn the material with help from their peers, or at minimum, make themselves known to you for further assistance. The other type of prior knowledge that can be helpful to activate is universal experience. Students can relate to experience personally, providing the teacher a springboard for discussion and examples. For instance, drawing on experiences like not being able to afford a holiday or referring to a popular news event can give students a real-world connection to the concepts you are about to teach. Contextual relevance gives them incentive to pay attention. But how is it possible to convey sub-skills and universal experience when language may be a problem? The answer is planning. Successful topic introductions require careful advanced planning, because you must also consider the best way to convey the skill or experience in your topic introduction in consideration of the EMI classroom. Most importantly, start with your learning objective for the class. A concise learning objective should include the teaching concept and skill within it. Choose to introduce one or both, but plan carefully how you convey meaning. Given that teacher talk alone is an especially ineffective approach in the EMI classroom, you should consider complementary modes of conveying meaning in your activation strategy. Some ways to consider conveying meaning that do not depend heavily on language comprehension include miming actions, using facial expressions and gestures, using sounds, drawing a picture, modeling a problem, and even providing samples or other physical objects to help bring ideas to life. One thing to keep in mind when planning your activation strategy is to keep it brief. Less than 5 minutes should be enough time to reach your activation goals. Let's see how a teacher effectively introduces a new topic by activating students' prior knowledge.
Okay, everyone. So last class we discussed marginal cost and marginal revenue. Today, we're going to discuss a new concept, price elasticity. And we're going to compare the price elasticity of different goods. Before I go any further, let's review how to organize our thinking to compare two things. Remember a few weeks ago, we compared Milton Friedman and John Keynes, yes? You made a table in your notebook with those at the top and categories down the side about ways to compare them. Today, we're going to do something similar, but instead of comparing two economists, we're going to compare a few different products and see what happens when their price changes. Now let me tell you something. I really love three things: kimchi, the New York Times, and I love to travel. So 2010 was a really bad year for me. Kimchi prices went way up because bad weather hit cabbage crops. At the same time, the New York Times started charging for online access, and the financial crisis made it really hard to afford traveling. For each one of these, the price increased, and I had to decide whether to buy it or not. What are your experiences with this? What happens to you when prices go up on your favorite things? Mihi, what's something you like to buy?
Clothes.
Okay, clothes. Jaewang, what about you? What do you buy regularly?
Cigarette?
Okay, cigarettes. Everyone, please turn to your partner and on a piece of paper, make a list of 5 things that you bought in the last year. Be specific. It could be big things or little things. In a minute, we're going to talk about the impact of price on your demand. So let's look in detail at kimchi. Remember that the law of supply and demand is about the effect that the availability of a particular product and the demand for that product, which is quantity, has on price, which is P. Here's the starting price of kimchi. Cabbage was hard to find, so prices went up. But people still wanted their kimchi. Maybe a few less people bought it, but the quantity of demand basically stayed about the same. In Korea, kimchi is known as a relatively price inelastic good. Price inelastic means even when price changes, demand doesn't respond. Price change? Nothing. Whereas goods with elastic demand respond strongly to price changes. Kimchi has price inelasticity of demand because even when price changes, demand doesn't respond. People consider it a necessity. You could double the price of kimchi and demand wouldn't change. In other words, people would still buy it, right? Inelastic, necessity. Let's brainstorm what could affect elasticity of a good.
Let's review his technique in detail. First, he chose a particular subskill to review, knowing that his learning objective was for students to compare the price elasticities of different products. The subskill he is refreshing is a particularly effective method for comparing things, using a table schema. He reminds students that they have used this kind of schema before to compare things, and tells them they will use it in a new way. Notice he opens with a reference to the last class's topic, leaving the door open for him to relate the two topics if applicable. Importantly, he uses miming to underscore the method used, and finally draws on the board the schema in preparation for the new content. Such a multimodal approach gives students multiple opportunities to recall the subskill they have used prior.
Remember a few weeks ago, we compared Milton Friedman and John Keynes, yes? You made a table in your notebook with those at the top and categories down the side about ways to compare them. Today, we're going to do something similar, but instead of comparing two economists, we're going to compare a few different products and see what happens when their price changes.
Next, he introduces his own experiences with reference to popular news and experiences that students may relate to. He leads into his own buying behavior and experience before eliciting the experiences of students. Such activation prompts students to think about the core aspects of the topic, in this case, price and demand.
Now let me tell you something. I really love three things: kimchi, the New York Times, and I love to travel. So 2010 was a really bad year for me. Kimchi prices went way up because bad weather hit cabbage crops. At the same time, the New York Times started charging for online access, and the financial crisis made it really hard to afford traveling. For each one of these, the price increased, and I had to decide whether to buy it or not. What are your experiences with this? What happens to you when prices go up on your favorite things? Mihi, what's something you like to buy?
Later, he refreshes another sub-skill, drawing supply and demand curves, before connecting demand changes to price changes, and finally to elasticity. He emphasizes the meaning with a well-planned gesture to plant in students' mind a visual as well as verbal connection with his example. Such advanced planning using multimodal, consistent gestures should not be left to chance. Without careful planning, your explanation may instead prove to be confusing or your delivery unreliable. To be certain you will make effective connections with students' prior knowledge in the EMI classroom, always plan your activation strategy in advance.
But people still wanted their kimchi. Maybe a few less people bought it, but the quantity of demand basically stayed about the same. In Korea, kimchi is known as a relatively price inelastic good. Price inelastic means even when price changes, demand doesn't respond. Price change? Nothing. Whereas goods with elastic demand respond strongly to price changes. Kimchi has price inelasticity of demand because even when price changes, demand doesn't respond. Inelastic. Necessity. Let's brainstorm what could affect elasticity of a good. Let's review how to organize our thinking to compare two things. Remember how we did it a couple weeks ago? You made a table in your notebook, remembering that the law of supply and demand. Let me tell you a story. What are your experiences with this? What happens to you when prices go up on your favorite things? The law of supply and demand is about the effect that the availability of a particular product and the demand for that product, which is quantity, has on price, which is P. You made a table in your notebook with those at the top and categories down the side about ways to compare them. Jae-hee, what's something you like to buy? I really love three things. I love kimchi, the New York Times, and I love to travel. Elastic, demand responds strongly to price changes. Inelastic, necessity, demand doesn't respond much to price changes.
Now let's see these techniques in action in the classroom.
Okay, everyone. So, last class we discussed marginal cost and marginal revenue. Today, we are going to discuss a new topic, price elasticity. and we are going to compare the price elasticity of different goods. Let's talk about the impact of price on you. First, imagine you are at the CEO shop because you really want some chocolate. That happens to me every day. So, you are going to buy your favorite chocolate. But wait, you see that all the chocolate in the store has doubled in price. What do? Do you still buy your chocolate? Do you buy something else? Do you steal your friend's chocolate? Mihi, what do?
I would maybe buy a tea instead.
Sure. So, does the price of chocolate make a big difference on whether you buy chocolate or something else?
Kind of. Maybe I choose another something else. I don't need chocolate, and I only have a little money.
Let's diagram what happened when the price went up with Mihi and people like her. When you study supply and demand, with graphic supply curve and demand curve to get to equilibrium price. Let's try to draw a demand curve for chocolate first. Then, I want to compare it in the same method to something else. Let's say rice. Let's say that a sample point of the demand curve is here. That means that at this price, the demand for all chocolate in the market is here.
Activating prior knowledge is an excellent technique to prepare students' minds for new content using what they already know. This is validating and encouraging for students of all language abilities. Building directly from your learning objective, you can refresh a subskill, draw on common experience, or both. It is essential to plan in advance your activation strategy. A strong activation strategy for the EMI classroom should use multiple modes of conveying meaning. Advanced planning will ensure you are consistent in your delivery and will benefit students with lower English listening ability. And finally, planning will also help you be brief in your activation, allowing you to swiftly and effectively move into the topic instruction with maximum student engagement. That's why mastering how to introduce a new topic by activating students' prior knowledge is a powerful learning tool in the EMI classroom. Let's review how to. Remember how we did it? You made a table. Remember that last time we recall what we did before? First, next, we should, the way to do this is, let me tell you a quick story related to today's topic. What are your experiences with this? What happens to you when you Mihi, what's something that Did you ever have an experience where Did this ever happen to you? You go on to see if this is familiar. I was in the store and